First thing up tonight, we have open time for the public. I wonder if there's anyone out there who would like to address the board about any of the things on our agenda or anything that we might have done at last week's meeting. Alec, do you have anybody out there?
Madam Chairperson, I'm giving it a moment just for more people to populate the attendees room, but if anyone would like to speak, please use the raise hand function to indicate so. Madam Chairperson, I have one member of the public for public comment, Mark Villard.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. This is.
Good evening, Mark. If you unmute yourself, we'll be able to hear you.
Oh, am I unmuted? Oh, there we go.
Yep, we can hear you.
All right.
Yes.
Yep, my name is Mark Villard. I'm here to represent my family's interests for 89 West Main Street and sort of explain our decision. I'll keep it brief and to the point. Starting in 2016, we attempted to sell the house to pay off a loan and taxes by renting to people interested in buying. The Eagles are professional tenants and have a history of doing this sort of thing.
Mr. Villard, I'm not going to let you speak poorly about somebody who's not here to defend themselves. So if you could refrain from using names, I would appreciate it.
Okay, everyone is
speak
sort of, I assume the tenants.
Yes, thank you.
The tenants at 89 West Main Street, whether or not you know the name or not of them, have a history of doing this sort of thing, which is being professional tenants. If I had only checked their background, we wouldn't have rented to them in the first place. This was our biggest mistake, and we have already paid for it.
Mr. Villard, do you have something that the board can do for you tonight? Because this is not really a place where you get to just make a speech.
Oh, okay. Well, what is the issue with 89 West Main Street specifically?
I put it on the agenda because it is the conclusion of some work we've been doing to collect back taxes that were owed to the town, and that is why it's on the agenda this evening.
Oh, okay. Are you aware of the bankruptcy?
I am aware of the court's action.
Okay. So this prevents this basically states that we do not own the house, and so we are not responsible for the house. Who does own the house is really kind of the question here. And what's actually been going on is that the attorney for the town, Miss Mac Nichols, has been trying to, through the courts with this receivership, get a decision that presupposes our ownership of the house. So then we're responsible for what happens to the tenants and any payments that are required for receivership. However,
that's a matter for the court. It's not something that this board is prepared to address.
Okay. Well, whether the court decides on whatever the decision is through the court, the reality is the bankruptcy prevents this from happening, and our decision as far as the house goes is that it is no longer our house, and we don't have any say in what goes on there. We've been dealing with this.
The point of us, and I'm sorry, I know I keep interrupting you, but the point of it being on our agenda tonight is so that I can talk about taxes that were owed to the town that will now be collected as a result of the court's decision about your property.
Oh, okay. So it has entirely to do with the taxes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're not responsible. My parents won't be paying those taxes because of what happened.
The receiver, there will be a receiver. I'm going to talk more about this when the agenda item comes up.
Okay.
This is not a matter of deciding who's going to pay the taxes. This is a matter of talking about the court's action that's going to clear it.
Okay, well, what's going to be decided in court then has nothing to do with this meeting?
The court has already decided.
The court has already decided? I thought it was in a hearing. The process. It's being heard at the moment and will go to trial.
The court has decided that there will be a receiver appointed.
Okay. Well, what
I
does this
will.
have to do with the Villards then? Why are we involved?
I did not use your name, and that's not what I'm prepared to discuss.
Okay, well, you're aware that we did own the house for 30 plus years.
Yes.
Okay, and you also are aware that there had been recently a lawsuit against my parents.
This is not a debate we're going to have anymore. So,
It's not really a debate, it's a public matter at this point because you're having
well,
a.
it's not appropriate to
How
this
so?
meeting tonight. So I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay, well, you brought it up, the house, right?
Well, yes, I did, because that's where what the taxes are owed on, and that's what we're going to collect. So,
Okay, well,
is
because
there
of the
anything else we can?
bankruptcy, there's
Is there
no
anything
tax.
else we can do? Is there anything else this board can do for you tonight?
Well, just let it be known our decision that
No, I'm not here to provide you with a platform for your opinion about this.
it's
It's
not an
just got
opinion,
nothing
it's
to
a
do with.
fact. It's a fact, and you're making decisions for
I'm
a
not
house
here
that
to
you're
give you.
trying to, through
I
the
am not
court,
here to let.
pin on my
uh,
parents once again so they're responsible for it.
Alec, would you please mute Mr. Villard? Thank you. So I just wanted to tell you, give you a few case studies on some of the properties that we've cleared recently. One of them is 89 West Main Street. You heard a little bit about that earlier. This probably started, I don't know, 5 or so years ago in Massachusetts, when a tenant calls the Board of Health and says, my property doesn't meet the housing code. Please come and inspect it. The Board of Health is required to go and inspect it. And if the Board of Health finds that the housing code is violated, it sets in motion a whole bunch of actions that are aimed at bringing the house back into compliance with the housing code. That is 105 CMR 410. That dictates the minimum standards for housing. And it should be said that in Massachusetts, the tenants are always favored because it's regarded as a homelessness prevention thing to favor tenants. So anyway, in this particular case, 89 West Main, the tenants called the Board of Health and said this house is substandard. Now the Board of Health went and inspected it, found that yes, in fact, there were some problems there, and it set in motion a whole chain of events that just went on between the Board of Health and ended up in the courts several times. There was a whole lot of back and forth that finally last week culminated in the court agreeing to let the town appoint a receiver. And that's a process that the receiver will submit a restoration plan to the town for how they're going to bring the house back up to code. It's a builder, like in this case, it's Robert Aubert. He's a well-known builder in town. He will be the receiver. He will bring the house back up to code, and when all his repairs are done, he'll auction the house. He'll recover his own costs. The town will recover all the back taxes that are owed, and in this case, the taxes and interest are a little more than $25,000 on that house. So the town will recover that money, and whoever buys the house at auction ends up owning it. So I can't answer the more granular level questions about the title, who owns it, who clears the title. The owners walked away from it. The bank walked away from it. There have been a whole bunch of other things going on, but that's the big picture. And what I want to say to you tonight is, after all that complication, the town will get its $25,000 in taxes, and there will be a house back on the tax rolls that meets the housing code. So it will be a nice rental property once again.
Otherwise, you have one member of the public who would like to speak again, Mark Villard.
Okay.
Mark,
Hello,
you should
Mark.
be able to unmute.
I would ask you to limit your comments to whatever we said about the property and the taxes we've recouped, because we are not in a position to entertain discussion of the history of how we got here.
Okay. Well, I'll be speaking to the narrative that you put forth earlier as to how we got here. I understand the basic narrative. Why someone would contact the Board of Health. It's exactly what the Board of Health agent at the time and tenants appealed to when they made it impossible for us to do repairs to the house.
Mark.
But
No,
but
no, no,
earlier
no.
you gave a false narrative that was completely
No, I did not.
disingenuous. Yes, you did. You
The
absolutely did.
files,
You're
the files
lying.
are available.
The
Anyone who
files
wants
don't
to know,
explain how Jami Kolosowics made it
do not
impossible for
interrupt
us.
me again when I'm trying to explain to you.
Well,
The
you're
files are
lying.
available. You know the
You
history.
know very well that you are
Alec,
lying, though.
please shut him off. I'm really sorry.
Jane didn't really let me talk because she knows she's lying and covering for Jami Kolosowics, who she knew was helping the Eagles commit fraud. Everybody at the Board of Health meeting in 2018 knew what they were doing. They were gaming the system and basically lying their way into a free house. Jami Kolosowics coached the Eagles every step of the way and strategized with them and encouraged them to do illegal things, like take a restraining order out against me. And the magistrate in that hearing for the restraining order just threw it out because it was absurd on the face of it. And the magistrate then asked if she plans on staying in the house, to which she responded, yes. And then she threw it out. I thought that just letting them talk in eviction court would have the same effect because they're obviously lying. And no matter how outrageous the lie or how many times they contradicted themselves, in the end, Judge Robert Fields just denied us the eviction and said it was retaliatory. Jane Peirce knew that Jami Kolosowics was assisting the Eagles in committing fraud. But just like Jami Kolosowics thought, she thought also that there was enough plausible deniability to basically never be found out. Since Jami Kolosowics stepped down from her position and moved out of town, Jane Peirce basically has to now stand up for the Eagles. Because that's what Jami did, and if she were to turn on them, she would basically be admitting that Jami Kolosowics was sort of in the wrong. The Eagles have now been in that house going on 5 years rent-free. Jane Peirce is clearly lying. These people set out to get free housing by lying and gaming the system. Okay? If we were allowed to evict them and this all didn't happen, then there would be no financial, crisis for this situation. The taxes would be paid and the loan would be paid. Instead, Jane Peirce and Jami Kolosowics thought that it would be a really good idea to enable the Eagles to go forward with their fraud. So, I just don't know how anyone can look at this situation and think otherwise. They're still in that house. It's condemned. We did everything that we could. So we're sick of being lied about, and we're sick of being gaslit by these town officials. I understand that they just want it to go away now. We do too. So stop coming after us. We're not paying for shit. If you want those people to live in that house for free so badly, then you pay for them. Anyways, here's what I would have said if I had been given the opportunity to say it. Starting in 2016, we attempted to sell the house to pay off a loan and taxes by renting to people interested in buying. The Eagles are professional tenants and have a history of doing this sort of thing. If I had only checked their background, we wouldn't have rented to them in the first place. This was our biggest mistake, and we've already paid for it. Everybody knew what was going on, and no one stopped it. The Eagles called the Board of Health because we needed them out in order to sell the house after they didn't want to buy, but also refused to leave. Getting the Board of Health involved was a surefire way to prevent eviction. The tenants made it impossible for me to do repairs to the house that would satisfy the Board of Health's order to correct. Jami Kolosowics advocated for and knowingly assisted the Eagles in their fraud while acting as Board of Health agent. She knew they were lying and covered for the Eagles just as Jane Peirce covers for Jami and her assisting of the Eagles against us now. We gave up after being refused an eviction by Judge Fields, who said the attempt was retaliatory, or in other words, a response to the Eagles calling the Board of Health, despite our showing that we had been trying to get these people out well in advance of their calling the Board of Health. We tried to do everything the right way, and the last thing we wanted to do was walk away. Jami Kolosowics did everything in her power, however, to enable the Eagles' fraud and ultimately influence the court to deny us an eviction. In 2020, my parents had no choice but to file for bankruptcy, since we were denied the recovery for our property and thus any chance of selling it. The Eagles have now been living in that house without paying a dime for going on 5 years. The house has been condemned since 2020. I'm sure their plan is to continue doing so until ridiculous so-called squatters' rights laws dictate that they own the place. Recently, attorney Donna McNichols, representing the town, filed a lawsuit against my parents in order to try to compel them to pay back taxes. However, due to their bankruptcy status, the judge at that hearing threw out this lawsuit. The receivership case has an ulterior motive, which is to achieve a court decision that presupposes that the Villards still own the house despite the bankruptcy, so the town can effectively throw this mess back into our laps. McNichols claims she got my mother to assent to the judge to continue the matter in court after the initial hearing, of which another has been scheduled for February 13th. Why the bankruptcy has not deterred attorney Donna McNichols is because she is essentially abusing the courts with her ulterior motive and is engaging in lawfare in order to trick my parents into assenting to ownership of the property once again. It will not work, however, because we see what she is doing, and we do not assent to any such thing, tricks or no tricks, legalese or no legalese. She is attempting to sidestep the bankruptcy. If she can stick the house back with us, then the town doesn't deal with these parasites or pay for the receivership. We would. At least on paper, as far as town officials are concerned, we would be responsible once again for all expenses, and once we evicted the Eagles, the bank could act on their lien, swoop in, and foreclose on the house. We are being positioned into a corner where we must deal with the mess that we did everything in our power to prevent, but that Jami and Jane Peirce insisted on creating for us. I understand why, after enabling and assisting bad faith actors committing fraud against homeowners in your town, that to then admit having done so by turning on them is an uncomfortable position to be in. If town officials weren't bad faith actors themselves in the first place, however, this wouldn't have happened. But after all we've been through, the harassment, the libel, gaslighting, abuse, lies, and wasting of our time and money, we don't care. It's your mess. We don't own the house because of the bankruptcy. The bankruptcy prevents this, and there's no getting around it. In the end, what's going to happen, regardless of what happens with the receivership, is we aren't paying. The bank wants to say they have discharged the property while at the same time retaining a lien on it. They don't want to foreclose because foreclosing means cleaning up this mess. But who owns the house? The bank. Workers' Credit Union owns the house. They accepted it as collateral when they granted the loan. So if the town wants to prevent us from evicting bad actors, then we can't pay back the loan or the taxes, which means this matter is strictly between the bank and the town, not our problem. Our stance is very simple. It is not our house, and it is not our mess to clean up. This mess belongs to Jane Peirce, and therefore the town and the bank. It's been 6 years, and we're sick of this bullshit. We don't care what you do with the property. Just don't bother us about it.